Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Experiential Learning 4. Thank you so much for joining me on this Friday afternoon. I really do appreciate it. I hope you all had a wonderful and successful week and that you are ready for the weekend. I'm sure most of us are definitely ready for the weekend. So welcome to Experiential Learning 4. So I just want to once again just thank you for joining me for the workshop on Monday. I really had a great time face-to-face and interacting with you. So like I said on Monday, obviously, due to the short time and time got the better of us on Monday, that we'll be hosting our class today just to cover the content for this week, which is chapter 1 of the textbook on skills and introduction. So I'm going to dedicate the next 40 minutes just to go through that lecture and answer any that you might have with regards to the lecture specifically. We won't be chatting about the previous work today, and we also won't be chatting about the formative assessments because we did that all in this week's workshop. So today's class is specifically dedicated to covering the content of this week, and that's specifically chapter 1 on skills. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sharing my screen and let's get started for today. But before we do that, can everyone just please record their attendance in the meeting chat by typing their name, their surname, and their student number in the meeting chat, just so that I'm able to record your attendance. And then we will start from there and we will get going for today's lecture. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for everyone who has recorded their attendance already. I really appreciate it. If you haven't recorded your attendance, please be sure to do so in the meeting chat. But let's get started with today's lecture specifically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sharing my screen with you so you can have a look at the lecture for today. And today we are busy looking at lesson 4. This is the lesson covering chapter 1 of the textbook on skills and introduction. So please make sure that whilst we are lecturing that we are ultimately you are going through this with your textbook next to you, just so that you are following in the textbook. So what are the lecture outcomes for today's lecture? Let's have a look at that a bit. Okay, so at the end of this lecture, you should be able to understand the basic elements of personal communication, understand the basic elements associated with the skills needed to be successful at work, comprehend the practical application of these elements through activities, understand the attributes of both good and bad leadership and the implications thereof in the workplace, understand the implications of their own skills and others through direct and indirect interactions, and analyze the general and interpersonal skills of others. So before this lecture, you should watch the video on effective communication. So if you haven't done so, please download the lecture slides and be sure to watch the video on effective communication skills in the workplace that you should watch. It's also part of the roadmap that I send you every week. So please do make sure that you watch these YouTube videos as they directly correspond to the content that is lectured each week. The next video that you should be watching is communication and interpersonal skills in the workplace. So please also do take the time to go watch that video specifically. So let's get started with today's lecture. So what are skills? So as you know, I said you need to come up with your own definition of skills, but let's have a look at what are skills. So recently, many role players in the industry have noted that there's really a weakness amongst graduates with regards to interpersonal skills. And this has ultimately come along with the advances of technology and the fact that we are able to generate information and produce products better, faster, and cheaper at a more cost-effective rate. But this has ultimately led to really low satisfying lives as we generate a shallow relationship. And ultimately, this has a negative impact on our interpersonal skills. However, interpersonal skills are key in any workplace, any relationship, and it is important as it is necessary for us to produce happy, productive, and satisfying relationships with others. The irony is that these interpersonal skills are now needed more than ever to cope with the stresses of information overload in both our professional and personal lives. So even though we are saying that the technology revolution has had a negative impact on cultivating these interpersonal skills. We ultimately need these interpersonal skills more than ever in order to manage and adapt to the technology revolution that we face in the 21st century. And we're going to be looking at those interpersonal skills specifically. So the purpose of this course is ultimately to provide you with the interpersonal skills to help you not to only develop successful careers, but also to be productive in personal relationships and live a meaningful life. The interpersonal skills presented in this class have been found to be vital ingredients for managerial success. And these are the skills that you're also going to be using in your career life. So let's look at the first section of this chapter. So we'll be looking at interpersonal skills and effective management of behavior. So let's have a look at the behavior and how these link to interpersonal skills. Through aggregation, researchers condensed the 51 behaviors of effective managers into a set of 6 separate roles. And these roles all link to interpersonal skills, but they also ultimately are extended into our behaviors. And what are these behaviors specifically? Firstly, you should be able to control the organization's environment and its resources. You need to be able to organize and coordinate. You should be able to handle information. You should also be able to provide for growth and professional development, motivate employees and handle conflict, and be able to do strategic problem solving. So although we are saying that managers should be able to do the following 6 sets of roles and skills, these sets of skills are also extended to normal employees, you and I. We should all be able to manage the environment in which we work and the resources we have at our disposal. We should also be able to organize our work to prioritize. We will all be dealing with information that we get on a daily basis, and therefore we should also be able to manage the information we get. We are all going to be growing in our professional careers, and therefore we should be able to adapt to that. We should be able to not only be able to motivate our colleagues, but also motivate ourselves. And in any work environment, we are going to have to resolve problems. Problems in the workplace, problems with clients, problems with people that we interact on a daily basis. So let's have a little bit more of a look at these skills and behaviors in more detail. So when we are looking at controlling the organization's information and resources, here we are specifically looking at the ability to be proactive and stay ahead of environmental challenges in planning and decision making. We all know that we are living in an environment that constantly changes, so we should ultimately be able to adapt. And adaptability is a skill that we need to be able to harness and in the 21st century. When we're looking at organizing and coordinating, managers need to be able to organize their subordinates around specific tasks and able to also coordinate independent relationships in the workplace in order for us to achieve our goals. When we're looking at information handling, the set of behavior comprises of using information and communication channels for identifying problems, understanding and changing environment in order to make effective decisions. Once again, like I said to you, we need to look at personal growth, and therefore managers need to obviously accommodate for their own personal growth. Managers are also responsible for motivating their employees so that the employees will feel compelled in their work, but it's also important that we motivate ourselves in the workplace, and we need to be able to solve strategic problems. So if we said that it is the responsibility of our managers to motivate us, and it is also our own responsibility to manage us, how do we speak of motivation? Because motivation is something that's critical. You will see that during phases of work and studies, we often lack in motivation. So how do we ultimately harness motivation and establish motivation and motivate others and ourselves in the workplace? So researchers have found the following 7 subcategories to be very important for managing motivation. The first thing is we need to accept authority in the workplace. So we need to accept that we all have a manager, and our manager will obviously guide our work. Competitive games in the workplace can be important for establishing motivation. This, for example, can be teamwork or group work, or whatever the case may be. Competitive situations can also be important in establishing motivation. Assertiveness plays a role, imposing wishes distinctiveness, and routine functions. And we're going to be looking at each of these in more detail in the following slides to highlight how motivation can be established in the workplace. So when we're looking at authority acceptance, there's a desire for us to accept the authority of our superiors. You know that one day that when you're in a working environment, you're going to have a manager or boss, and it is important to accept the authority of your manager. Not only will your manager be in a more authoritative role than you, but your manager will provide key guidance and resources to you. So it's really important to have a manager. Competitive games, this could be, for example, engaging in competitive games with your peers. These can be sports or team building or anything of the like. When we are looking at competitive situations, there's a desire to engage in competition with peers involving both occupational and work activities, and this can once again be extended to activities such as team building. When you're looking at assertiveness we are looking at the fact that there's a desire to behave in an active and assertive manner, that you make your actions known. Imposing wishes, is a desire to tell others what to do and utilize sanctions in influencing others. We will always be in an environment where our decisions influence others, and that we always have an opinion on something specific. So you should be able to voice your opinion. Distinctiveness, this is the idea to stand out from a group that is unique in a highly visible way. You want to be noticed for the work that you do within a team or within a work environment. And routine functions, these are the functions that we have in our day-to-day job, that are routine that we do on a day-to-day or weekly basis. And these are super important because we need to have a desire to carry out these routine day-to-day activities, and they are often associated with our managerial work. So now that we've looked at the key skills that managers have and motivation, let's look at some other skills that are also important in the workplace. Even if you know the behaviors to effective managers engage in and have the motivation to apply them, you still need to have the appropriate skills to implement these motivations and behaviors effectively. Such efforts generally conclude that the effective manager must be competent in 4 different skills. And this is not just dedicated to managers. I think all employees in any organization should have the following skills. These skills include conceptual skills, human skills, technical skills, and political skills. And when we are talking about these skills, what do we ultimately mean? Conceptual skills ultimately include skills such as the mental ability to coordinate all of the organization's interests and activities. So you need to be able to coordinate work. Secondly, when we're looking at human skills, this is the ability to work with others, to understand each other's points of views, not just individuals, but also people within groups and teams, and in order to motivate one another. When we're looking at technical skills, these might be specific skills that you need in order to perform your job. For example, you might be working on a group project in graphic design, and you need to all work in Adobe Photoshop or in Adobe Illustrator. These are the technical skills you will use in your day-to-day job. Political skills, on the other hand, aren't necessarily directly related to politics, but these are the skills that we're going to be using in order to enhance our own position, build a power base, and establish the right connection. So these are more, in a sense, networking skills. You want to meet the right people, you want to network, you want to build your network so that you're able to grow yourself and advance your professional development in the workspace specifically. You can look at the other sets of skills that might be important, like we've spoken of those in the previous slides, but other skills that are also important in the workplace are skills such as human skills, and this is really the ability to listen to others, to communicate verbally effectively, to show patience and an understanding of others in the workplace. You will work with people that have different opinions and different viewpoints on certain things with you, and it is important to accept their viewpoints. You should also learn how to communicate effectively and listen effectively in situations. The most important skills that we need is skills such as communication and interpersonal skills, and we're going to be looking at interpersonal skills in the next chapter next week. We also need to have an ethical or spiritual orientation. This is with the fact that we need to know, we need to possess the skills to act ethically in the workplace. We need to be able to adapt to change management and any changes that may happen in the workplace. And that adaptability. You need to be able to motivate yourself and others, and you need to be able to solve problems within the workplace. So we said that interpersonal skills are super important for managers and not only employees, but what inherently are interpersonal skills? We said that we all need to have a range of skills and that interpersonal skills are critically important in the workplace, and these go hand in hand with communication. But what ultimately is interpersonal skills then? So interpersonal skills are skills such as, but are not limited to, the skill to be able to listen, set goals, empower others, take lead, making ethical decisions, and be able to communicate across cultural boundaries. Adaptability is also a key interpersonal skills that we need to harness in the workplace. So what are then the key interpersonal skills that we have? So let's look at ultimately extending the initial list that we looked at. These are lists of interpersonal skills that you need to be able to harness. These skills include skills such as self-awareness, sending many messages, either this could be obviously verbal or non-verbal, listening, persuading, setting goals, politicking, providing feedback, running meetings, empowering others, resolving conflicts, taking lead, negotiating, managing change, working with a diverse group of people, coaching, working within teams, ethical decision-making, creative problem-solving, cross-cultural communication, and applying emotional intelligence. Some of these interpersonal skills can also be added to your CV as skills that you possess, that you can bring to the workplace. So now that we know that we all need key interpersonal skills, can these skills ultimately be taught? Can we learn these skills? And that is really the biggest question that we need to ask. Can these skills be taught over time? If the answer was no, we would then be wasting a lot of our time to dedicate to the idea of interpersonal skills. So yes, interpersonal skills can definitely be taught and definitely be perfected over time. And that is really one of the key things that this module is dedicated towards, is perfecting and teaching you how to harness your interpersonal skills. But in order for us to do that, we first need to define what skills do we have and what skills are we lacking. And in order for that, we need to obviously understand which interpersonal skills we have. And we're going to be definitely looking at that more specifically next week. Next week, we're going to be dedicated at crafting interpersonal skills and measuring our interpersonal skills. That is also directly related to your formative assessment one. Often, this will also relate to the fact that we need to work outside of our working environments and outside of our comfort zones in such a way that we can ultimately work in an environment that ultimately requires us to adapt. And adaptability is super key in the 21st century. So now that we know that these skills can be learned and taught, how do we teach these skills? And how do we teach other people interpersonal skills? Because most of us have this common thinking that Peter just behaves rudely and we mustn't take it personally. So this is the common notion or the idea that if someone is the way they are, we just need to accept them for who they are and we shouldn't try and change them. But this is not necessarily true. We should always ask ourselves, is that person behaving in an acceptable manner? And is it acceptable? Would this work in a job interview? You may imagine you went to a job interview and you were rude and the person that's interviewing you must just accept it. That's not necessarily how it works. Even if we are rude, we need to make sure that we are aware of the fact that we are rude. We lack in that area and we need to ultimately build on that and improve on that. So maybe we should know that Peter is maybe not aware of the fact that he is rude, or the fact that his rudeness is hampering his success. So therefore, it is important that we are aware or create awareness around the fact that we are lacking in certain interpersonal skills and that we can ultimately teach them and teach each other these interpersonal skills or learn these interpersonal skills over time. And that will ultimately be to our own benefit over time. The more interpersonal skills we possess, the more effective managers and workers we'll be over time. So how do we ultimately teach these skills? So it's important to note that a skill by definition is ultimately the ability to demonstrate a system and sequence of behavior that is functioning in relation to a certain goal. So there is no single action that constitutes a skill. So it is important to note that a skill can be many different things. There is no one thing that is a skill. Listening can be a skill, communication can be a skill, adaptability can be a skill. So there are many sets of skills that we have. Okay. For example, the ability to write clearly and communicate clearly is specifically a skill. Some people are really great at writing reports and others aren't, but that is something that can be crafted over time. The more you do it, the better you get at it. So these are some skills that you need to note, that each one can possess these skills. And the more we do it, and the more we practice our skills, we will ultimately be able to improve our skills over time. Okay. So how do we then teach these skills? To become competent at any skills, people need to understand the skill conceptually and behaviorally, and have opportunities to practice these skills and get feedback on how they are performing based on these skills. So feedback is an important loop for us in order to assess whether we have improved. Kolb has developed a model that encompasses most of these learning dimensions, and these are ultimately important in experiential learning. So if we know that we have skills, maybe we lack skills, we then need to learn these skills. When we are learning these skills, we need to ultimately this ultimately takes place in a learning dimension, but it's also important to know that we don't all learn in the same fashion. So in order for us to learn our skills, we all need to first understand which type of learners are we. We all learn in different fashion. Some of us learn by listening, some of us learn by engaging. So we first need to understand, how do we learn for us to ascertain how can we then effectively learn the skills that we need to possess in the workplace and in our career life in future. So let's look at Kolb's learning model. So there are different ways in which we are learned. So according to Kolb's model, comprehensive learning encompasses 4 elements. So in order for us to ultimately learn effectively, we need to ultimately be able to go through all of these 4 elements. Firstly, the way in which we can learn something is by active participation in a new experience, and this is otherwise known as concrete learning. So, for example, when we attended the workshop, we all worked on our communication and improving our CV. That is something that is active participation in a new experience, and we are learning from that. We can also learn via a reflection observation. This is where we examine a specific experience that we have. So we are reflecting on something that we have specifically experienced. And this is the second part of the way in which we can learn via reflective observation. Secondly, is abstract conceptualization, and this is ultimately the integration of conclusions into workable theories based in new experiences. So yeah, we are going to learn from our experience. That's what abstract conceptualization means. Then the fourth is active experimentation, and this is where we apply our learning in new situations. So it really works in a complete full circle. It's a whole 360. The active experimentation is where we take what we have learned and we have ultimately put this in practice. If this model is taken as a guide, the learning of skills is maximized when students get the opportunity to combine the watching of skills, the thinking about the skills, and doing the skills. So are we watching other people use these skills effectively? Are we learning these skills? Are we thinking about these skills? And then are we practicing these skills? We are then able to ultimately take this model and ultimately complete our learning in a 360 perspective by using concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, and then the active experimentation at the end of the day. So what I want you to do for this class is some activity, is an exercise. I want you to follow the following link. You need to complete the online questionnaire. Which communication style do you have? So communication, as we already said, is one of the skills we can obviously have. So communication is a skill, and we spoke of the fact that many people put on their CV that they are good at communicating. But it is also firstly important for us to know which communication style do we have. So please follow the following link in order to ascertain which communication style you have. And next week, I'm going to ask you for feedback as to which communication style you have or possess. So please follow the link. You can just copy and paste the link into your URL, and you can then do the quiz. And at the end of it, it will tell you which communication style obviously applies to you. And there are 4 such communication styles. Either you're going to be an analyzer, a socializer, a director, or relator. So if you're an analyzer, someone that is an analyzer, someone that would like facts and logics, prefers policies and planning, is organized, prefers control over the chaos, and likes instructions. A director, on the other hand, is someone that is more objective and result-orientated, wants to see productivity, is competitive, takes charge, and makes firm decisions. A relator is someone who enjoys change and creativity, is friendly and optimistic, likes big ideas and conceptualizes, and is very adaptable. A socializer is someone that seeks motivation, prefers teamwork, likes building relationship, nurturing and sensitive, and can also be a good listener. So I think it would be interesting for you to take the quiz and see which type of communication style obviously applies to you. So for the purposes now, I'm actually going to do this with you. Obviously, I'm going to apply my own. So let's have a look at this. I'm just going to escape and stop sharing my screen. I'm going to open my screen with you, and we're going to do this all together. So what I want you to do is on your phone, go and copy and paste this link into a URL. I just want to open a URL here that I want to share with you. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to do this together. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to obviously apply to my communication style. So I'm going to find out what is my communication style, but for the purposes, I want you to do yours specifically. So let's start the quiz. So you're going to go to this. It's glassdoor.com/blog/quiz what your communication style /. So let's get started and doing the quiz. I'm going to do it with you. Okay, so how would your colleagues describe you? So now you need to think of your colleagues and how would they describe me? So would they describe you as trustworthy, shy, sarcastic, cunning, and ambitious? I think many of my colleagues would describe me as ambitious, because just I've heard as in the office what they would have said about me. How direct are you when letting your colleagues know about your needs when working on a project together? One, I usually try to get to feel out other people's needs before letting them know about my own. That way, everyone ends up happy with the outcome. I ask for what I want directly, and I'm sure to listen to their points of view. I get straight to the point about what I need and when I need it. Everyone's ultimately out there for themselves, so I think it's best to be blunt. I'm relatively indirect. It's not always easy for me to spell out my needs in a face-to-face conversation. Sometimes I follow up later via email and explain why I need help. I prefer to be in control, so I'm not always in the direct right off the bat. I'd rather figure out a way of gaining the upper hand and keeping my real needs to myself. Okay. So usually I'm kind of the one I kind of try to figure out what everyone wants first, and then I will say what are my needs. So I kind of first want to read the room. That's the type of person I am. Okay. What's something you'd never do when communicating in the workplace? Reveal my motives. I prefer to keep or to remain guarded, but my desires before someone else's. It's important for me to feel, it's important to me that others feel heard. Be blunt in a way that causes a debate or argument. Lie, honesty is key. Back down from a position. I'm pretty much always right, and even if I'm not, I'd never admit it. Okay, so what's something you'd never do when communicating in a workplace? Like, I don't like to lie. Honesty is super important for me in the workplace, so everyone knows where we stand. How are you most likely to react when a colleague gets promoted? Tell them that I'm next, congratulate them, but subtly let them know that I'd like to be promoted. I'm that person. I would congratulate and support you. I'm very happy for the fact that you are promoted. What's your biggest motivator when approaching work-related conversations or conversations and negotiations? Avoiding arguments and confrontations, making others feel sympathy for my situation, letting people know how I feel about without actually saying it, achieving my goals, winning at everything, no matter at what cost. So what My biggest motivator is achieving my goals in the workplace. How are you most likely to respond to a direct report who messed up a big project? So let's have a look. I can't believe who did this. Get out of my office until I can cool down. It's nothing. Don't worry about it. It's all right. I'll figure it out on my own, like always. I'm disappointed. This happened. Let's work together to figure it out. I'm that person. Let's work together. And how we can prevent the situation in the future. Teamwork is super important to me. How do you aim to make people feel when you're frustrated with them? Like they've been caught off guard, like they should just do what I say, that they're getting what they want, perhaps a little bit irked or confused, but not enough to say anything about it, comfortable and secure, so they can respond appropriately. I want you to feel comfortable and secure so that you are able to respond. Which of the following can you see yourself doing at work? Politely ask your colleagues to keep it down because the conversation is distracting. Gossip about a colleague with another teammate. Get into an argument with a co-worker. Capitalize on someone else's weaknesses to get what they want. Leaving a meeting or conversation that seems like it might be heated. I would politely ask your colleagues to keep it down. Okay. What physical or vocal characteristics do you take on when I'm not on big eye contact? I prefer to be obtuse. I try and keep my tone of voice happy and might even touch someone's arm in really regardless of whether I'm saying something positive or negative. I speak loudly and clearly and physically close to people to let them know I'm serious. I always make eye contact and stand facing the person when I'm speaking to. Yes, I always make eye contact. The last one, what's the best way to deal with a negative feedback you don't agree with in your opinion? Okay? Accept feedback, but never seek it from this person again. Figure out a way to get back at that person, fight against it until I agree. Seek clarification from that person, giving it so that we know we can come to a mutual understanding. Accept it, apologize, and move on. I would always like to seek clarification. Okay, let's look. Okay, so I'm an assertive communicator. So that is my results. Okay, so let's have a look and see what are you. Anyone that has taken it and any can tell me what they are. I'm an assertive communicator. Who would have known? Anyone else can tell me what their communication style is on your side? Okay, I'll give you some time to do that, to pop it into the meeting chat. Okay, so that's it for today's lecture. Please be sure to also watch the video on a recipe for great communication. And what do you need to do for next week? For next week, you need to read chapter 2, 3, and 4 of the prescribed textbook. Next week, we'll be focusing on self-awareness, self-management, and emotional intelligence. For next week's class, please make sure that you take a selfie of yourself. You also need to complete all the self-assessment activities in chapter 2, and you need to do the observation task sheet that is part of the practicum. Okay, Michelle says she got the same. She is also an assertive communicator. Anyone else want to tell us what you got? Sorry guys, just to note, I see only Michelle has recorded her attendance in the meeting chat. Can everyone else just also please just record your attendance for me in the meeting chat by typing your name, your surname, and your student number in the meeting chat. Also, please indicate to me what communicator are you, considering I'm assertive, so let's what it says. It says about assertive communicator. Congratulations. Empathy. There's so few always allows you to want and achieve your goals while still respecting others, which means they will respect you in return. While everyone is capable of doing this, it takes a person who is able to be decisive, and listen effectively to truly master it. Moving forward, know that the way you interact with others is an asset that you should highlight and feel proud. Okay, good. Okay, so this is great. Now this is something I can actually add to my CV, right? If as a skill, I'm an assertive communicator, meaning that I'm able to act decisively, I can take responsibility, and I'm ultimately able to interact with others in order and still respect them. These are some skills that I can now add to my CV that I didn't know about myself before. Yeah, that's just super interesting. I actually enjoyed that. Thank you for everyone for recording their attendance. Can anyone else tell me what communication style you are? It would be quite interesting to note. I'll give you a few seconds.
Let me just ask.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi there.
How are you?
Fine, thanks, and you?
I'm good. Ma'am, I'd just like to ask, how do I access the link?
So you need to go into the lecture slides. Or what I can do, I can type it, Jeff. I can just copy and paste. I've copy and pasted the link here for you in the meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
I've sent the link to everyone to access it that way in order to do your communication quiz. Okay. So on this communication quiz, due to the fact that our Zoom meeting is running out, what I want everyone to do is I want you to, after you have done your quiz on what communication style are you, I want you to pop it on our WhatsApp group and tell us what communication style are you, so that we can all have a look at that and chat about that next week as well. So please quickly do what is your communication style quiz and pop your results for me onto the WhatsApp group so we can all have a look and see. And then next week we'll start off our lecture about looking at all the different communication styles that there are and what it says about you. Thank you so much. I'm going to end it here for today just because of the fact that our Zoom meeting time is running out. So please just make sure that you do that. And then I look forward to chatting to you next week. I will let you know. We'll probably have class next week, Thursday, again at 5:30. But I will inform you next week. I will share the Zoom meeting link with you next week, and I'll inform you of our class time. But you can make a note of it on the side that our class will probably be again next week, Thursday at 5:30. So just take a mental note of that. But thank you so much for joining me today, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day. And a wonderful rest of your weekend, and then I'll chat to you next week. Good luck with your communication style quiz, and I can't wait to see what style of communication you are. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, Bongiwe also says she's assertive. Okay, great. I can't wait to see what everyone else says. Please make sure that you do pop it on our WhatsApp group. Thanks so much, everyone, for today. I hope you have a beautiful weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.